Hello, everyone. I'm rusty. It certainly has been a while since we've talked about some One Piece on this channel, but I'm back to discuss something pertinent, something I've been meaning to discuss for a while, Marco versus King. Okay, that was kind of dry. Let's try this again. Something I've been wanting to discuss, Marco versus King. That's at least a bit better. With these two characters, people are speculating that they should come into contact with each other for several reasons, but I think this video is going to be like 3 parts. One about Marco, just strictly about Marco versus King. Then we're going to talk about who's stronger and then who's perceived as better. And that's simply because a topic like that has come up before. We had an entire discussion about Marco versus King, who was better and who was stronger. And the thing is, based off of the story, I think we can come to a definitive conclusion as far as like who is better and who I think will be stronger. So that's the video, right? That's the point of the video. That's the structure of the video. So let's start. Marco versus King. Is it going to happen? Yes. Is it going to matter? No. What do I mean? All right. Okay. Marco and King, I think they have the powers, the devil fruits, the abilities to make for a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing fight. Marco, we know, the first division commander of Whitebeard, and King, as far as we know, the first commander of Kaido, the strongest commander of Kaido, the right hand of Kaido. We still don't know his bounty, but I'm going to jump out there and say it's probably higher than Queen's, right? We don't know Marco's bounty either. So I think that could be a cool reveal in Wano as well. If we get Marco's bounty while we're in Wano, which more than likely we should. At this point, I wonder if his bounty's changed ever since he lost to Blackbeard. Like, I've never heard of the world government lowering a bounty. Have they ever found out that somebody's kind of buns and they said, you know what, they're not worth that amount, let's lower it a bit? Because for Marco, he was a Yonko candidate for the most part. So before fighting Blackbeard, it should have been around 1.5 to 2 bill. After fighting Blackbeard, I don't think it should have gotten any lower, but maybe if he had won, it would have gotten to 2 bill if it was 1.5 or 2.5 if it was 2, right? Because Blackbeard is around there. But Marco has a lot more experience and notoriety than Blackbeard did at the time. Blackbeard kind of came out of nowhere. And of course, at this point, he's eclipsed Marco. But again, back to Marco versus King, 2 Zoans that fly, that in some way use flame, and they're both right-hand commanders. It's a match made in heaven.
Okay, then Brago is a match made in heaven. Why don't you think it's going to happen?
Well, okay, guys, let me break it down for you. In stories, specifically shonen, let's keep it to shonen, there's a progressive system, and it's normally involving the main cast of characters, and in this case, the Straw Hats. And in this instance, while Marco is one of the strongest combatants in Wano currently, I think his time has passed and his era is over. Over? Oh shit, over, yay? No, his era is over. I'm not gonna say he's a failure, because I don't think he's a failure. Marco is a very accomplished individual, even though we don't know exactly things that he's done. We just know he's the first division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, and that in itself, regardless of what you're saying, that's a feat. So in regards to Marco, while I think he's going to be involved in the war, obviously, like a major part of this war, I don't think he can be the reason for one of the major commanders to fall. Marco is going to be in the same role that he was in at Marineford. He is playing support. He's going to be going around, flying, taking out people that needs to be taken out, saving people, but he's not going to get a definitive win over anyone of note, or let me just say any of the commanders. I think those characters are reserved for people that are, and for people that are forcing their way into the new era. And for Marco, I think he knows that. After Marco kicked the ship of the Big Mom Pirates off the waterfall, he said, by the time you guys get up here, the era may have changed. Where I think Marco understands that this war is not for him, right? It's not for his notoriety or for him to accomplish anything personally. The point is for him to support the next era, the new generation. And in this case, it's Luffy, and to a broader extent, the supernova. So for Marco going into this, I think he will clash with King. I think it'll be a moment in which we see the 2 right-hand commanders of Kaido and Whitebeard. They'll face off. Now, have they met before? They should have at some point. I mentioned this before in a review, but I like the fact that the Big Mom Pirates, they knew of King and Marco. Again, these are notable people. They're notorious people. But when subtle things like that happen, it makes the world feel a bit more real, right? It doesn't feel like just strictly fantasy. It's like, okay, these people, they're notorious and people know about them. Now, the only one that's kind of weird is Katakuri. And this goes back to Katakuri and his betrayal and his feats, because if he ever fought one of these commanders, based on what they said, he's never landed on his back. But that could be Cap, because Brûlé, she was lying for the most part about a lot of things in Whole Cake Island. So Katakuri may have fell on his back versus commanders or versus admirals or versus people he's fought before, but that's not the legend that they built up in Whole Cake Island. He was the backbone. He was basically the fortitude of the Big Mom Pirates. So that lore, that legend, it had to be as large as possible because that shadow, it kind of protected the Big Mom pirates. That's a completely different discussion for another day. However, Marco versus King, at least a clash has to happen. As far as significance, symbolism, all of that in regards to the arc, the Straw Hats or someone that's blossoming into the new era, they're going to get that win on King. As far as who's better and who's stronger, we haven't seen a lot of King, but we've seen a lot of Marco, and that was in a war, so it's not really definitive. First, we're going to talk about who's better, and then we can discuss who I think is going to be stronger. Better means overall devil fruit, intelligence, strength, endurance, just better. For example, I think Katakuri is better than Luffy in regards to everything, right? Where Katakuri has more things better than Luffy, but it seems like endurance and willpower, Luffy had that over him, so he overcame Katakuri. So better is a tricky one because someone can be better in regards to their arsenal, but you can still be stronger. Where someone has a better devil fruit, they're just overall better in regards to mechanics and again, arsenal, but you could still be stronger because you could have a great equalizer. And it's hard right now to put King over Marco as better. In regards to devil fruit, we're not exactly sure how King's devil fruit works, right? Flame is incorporated in some way. The man gets hot, but we're not quite sure exactly how it works yet. Marco, we know for his flame, it heals, and Marco can recover from injury for the most part indefinitely. There is a limit to it, but we don't know that limit, and that limit is insane. So Marco, he can recover indefinitely. So for King going against Marco, it's almost the perfect matchup because you have Flame going against Marco, he can heal himself. They both fly, they're both really strong. I mean, they both kick the ship off of the waterfall, but there are like subtle differences here. When King did it, Big Mom was on the ship, right? Big Mom, everyone was on the ship. When Marco did it, Big Mom wasn't there. When King did it, as far as the manga, not a named attack. In the anime, they made it look like Diablo Jambe. In the manga, when Marco did it, he used a name attack. So that's something it's minuscule, but it's a subtle way to portray these characters. But based off what we've seen so far, Marco is better. I think Marco has the better devil fruit. He's a mythical Zoan. I think Marco, based on what he's done versus admirals and people in that Marineford War, he gets more credit than King. From what we know, King hasn't fought any of these people yet. For Marco, pushing people like the admirals, like overpowering someone like Kizaru, that's an amazing feat, and people don't recognize it as much because people don't place the admirals on the tier of the Yonko, where I think is not that far apart at all. And then of course you have to factor in Kizaru's trollish personality, where things like this happen and he's like, oh, whatever, right? Like he's not trying as hard. So some of Marco's feats, they get taken away. Marco did the same thing to Aokiji. Of course, that was off guard, right? He was protecting Luffy from Akainu, and he did a good job, right? He did a good job for the most part, but people remember when Marco basically slashed Akainu with Vista, and it didn't do any damage, right? Akainu just laughed it off. So people look at Marco as like, okay, this guy is not that strong. If Akainu, who in some people's minds got bodied by Whitebeard, they, don't use context and just a story or whatever. But anyways, how is Marco of any use? I remember, right? Because Marco has come a very long way. People used to call Marco Sanji with wings. Literally, that's what people used to say. Now people are coming around and understanding that Marco, he was up against some formidable people. So we really can't take too much away from him. But Marco, he's had his fair share of criticism. Now, in regards to who I think will be stronger, again, in Shonen, there is a progression system. It's a progressive state where characters we see further in the story, they're always perceived as stronger. Whereas for Rob Lucci, people think he's stronger than Crocodile. Where for Doflamingo, people think he's stronger than Crocodile and Rob Lucci, right? Where for Katakuri, people think he's stronger than Doflamingo, Crocodile, and Rob Lucci, where more than likely he is because it's a progressive state. In this instance, King being an antagonist, the right-hand commander of Kaido. I think we're going to see impressive things from Marco, right? No doubt. I think Marco is going to show maybe some advanced level of observation, maybe some advanced armament, but I think this arc with King being a swordsman and how he's been portrayed so far, he seems to be the character, the one character that Kaido has the utmost faith in. He was the one who arranged everything to capture Yamato. He heard of Kaido's issue. He immediately got right on it. He's showing the competence and the wherewithal that Katakuri showed at Whole Cake Island. And honestly, guys, we see what the Big Mom pirates are without Katakuri. So King, he honestly may be the one holding it all together because Queen, he's not a doofus, but a doofus. And Jack, he's the drag down, right? They call him that. Outside of Luffy's fight and maybe the Supernova fight versus Kaido that I'm assuming, King is going to have a prominent fight in the story. And maybe it's with Marco at one point, but I think someone else other than Marco will finish that fight with King. So I think based on what we see from Wano, everything that King will show, I think King may have advanced armament, right? I think he will have advanced armament. He's going to have an insane hybrid form. We saw what Ulti was able to do against Luffy, right? Where Luffy, he was looking at Gear 4th like, hey, I need you, bro. I need you right now. And for King, just imagine the scaling, right? Because for Katakuri, I know it kind of breaks things, right? And they're all right right-hand commanders, and people are gonna say, well, they're all not the same strength, bro. Guys, I get that. No two individuals are the same strength, but I think relatively they're around the same strength, right? I think every right-hand commander, if they fought, it would be a high diff to extreme diff fight. I don't think any right hand is getting mid diff to low diff by another right hand. The only right hand that right now I'm skeptical about in regards to strength, and he may be on another tier, not another tier, but maybe stronger enough to mid diff another right hand commander, is Ben Beckman. And that's because of things Oda said about him. I'll talk about him another time. This is not a Ben Beckman video, all right? So I'm not going to get deep into Ben Beckman here. That sounded weird. Personally, I think King will be shown as stronger by the end of Wano. I mean, if we go through like specific attributes and categories in regards to physical strength, I'm leaning towards King because King is physically the more imposing figure. In regards to Devil Fruit, I think Marco has the better Devil Fruit so far, because he's a mythical Zoan, and he can heal indefinitely. If King shows something that can match Marco in some way that is crazy powerful, we may have to go King with Devil Fruit, because right now I think it's a watch. I think it's equal, but Marco, he has the mythical Zoan, so actually no, I think Marco is stronger. I think Marco has the better Devil Fruit, right? Endurance and defense, Marco, I think based off of his Devil Fruit, he probably has it right now. But his overall power and how it could affect others around him, I think King has that. I think Marco, for the most part, his flames cannot hurt you, so the flames are for him. For King, the flames can hurt you. And that feat, no pun intended, I don't think there was a pun there to be intended, but that feat, kicking Big Mom off the waterfall, you guys follow me a little bit? All right, that feat, I think it's underrated. He had to have the physical strength to, listen, Big Mom's ship is enormous, and Big Mom herself is enormous. I don't think Oda knows how much she weighs. He was able to kick that ship off the waterfall. Granted, King took advantage of the terrain and the advantage state that he was in, so it takes away from it a bit. Still wildly impressive. Competence. That is the name of the game. That is something I want to see from all the commanders. That was the issue with the Big Mom pirates in Whole Cake Island. So far, not really the issue of the Beast Pirates. There's some moments where we can question it, right? Where Queen, after Big Mom was tranquilized and all that, he decided to go to Onigashima instead of leaving it to Babanuki. If Big Mom is already knocked out, right? You can't beat Big Mom. No one there can beat Big Mom. She's knocked out. Send Babanuki with her to Onigashima. Queen left Udon to Babanuki. And that's why they're in the middle of what they are now, because Kid left, Luffy took over, Hyogoro. Like, they just ran amok in that place because Babanuki got influenced by Tama. It's so much going on there. However, Marco versus King, at some point, I will start doing specific breakdowns and have like different categories in which I'm going to break down these characters: Devil Fruit, strength, defense, endurance, intelligence. To have fun One Piece discussion. Of course, some of the discussion we talk about, we don't know enough about these characters, so it's all speculation anyway. But it could be fun. But guys, give me your thoughts. Marco versus King. What do you think about it? Do you feel like it's going to happen? How would you like it to happen? And who do you think is stronger? Because I think that's an important thing here. And I really want to clarify this before I end it. I do think Marco currently is perceived as stronger. Like, I would even probably have Marco as stronger than King right now, just based off of everything he's done in Marineford. He's gone up against more credible people, things that we can point to, whereas King, we don't know much about him. I fully believe by the end of Wano, King will have the stronger portrayal, and he will show a bit more in comparison to Marco. I think his Devil Fruit is a bit more devastating. While Marco's could be perceived as better right now, we have to see what other effects King's Devil Fruit has, because I think that's the thing. We don't know enough about King, so just off of that, Marco gets the edge. Another slight edge that King has is the fact that he is also a swordsman. So while he can fight in the air with Marco, he can also compete as a swordsman. Of course, we're not sure exactly how competent he is, but I would assume a right-hand commander who has a certain presence about him would be skilled with the blade. But guys, give me your thoughts. Make sure to like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BrogDace to stay updated. That's where I am most of the time. But also follow me on Instagram at brogd.ace. I'm there as well. That's a more personal thing. If you want to DM me, you can. I'll try to reply. And then thank you to my patrons. You guys support me. I appreciate it. The One Piece anime is back, so reactions will be back, and I will definitely post it to you guys first, and then we'll try to get it up on the channel at some point. But yeah, make sure to like. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for your patience. Again, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and I shall catch you guys in the next one. Peace.